In the meantime, this thing's pretty much done, so let's move on to the decal stuff. So let me go ahead and accept this mask and move on. And another reason why I haven't streamed this yet is I'm a little concerned that the amount of RAM that this project uses may cause issues with streaming. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to function. So this thing takes up a gigantic amount of active memory. The more I work with it, the worse it gets. So, but that's kind of a consequence of having 3 mesh groups, one of them at 8K, one of them at 4K, and one of them at 2K. So, hey, Jacob, if you could do me the favor of just ensuring that the guys here can, like, if I don't miss their questions, basically.
Yeah.
So just read questions out to me, and that'll make my life a little easier. So
Of
I need to load
course.
up.
That's what I'm here for.
Sweet. I need to load up my reference images, so it's going to take 1 second. Should have done that earlier, actually. Apologies for that in advance. So I've shown this to quite a few people already. I think you guys have been watching me work on this for the past few months now. This has been a project I've been working on since 2011, off and on. Like I kind of worked on it a little bit, like built part of the body, and I like kind of gave up on it. And then I came back to it a couple of years later and said, "Oh man, I want to really work on this some more." So I finished up most of it, then I kind of just left it. And then this year I decided, you know what, we need some more portfolio pieces, and I think it would do the company a lot of justice if we could show that the people who work in the company can actually make the stuff with the tools. So I was like, all right, well, this thing's almost done, so I might as well just finish it off. So the normals for these trucks down here started probably in December, and I finished it early in January, I believe. And then the rest of this I just finished up recently, and it took me the better part of a month working about an hour a night to finish up the normal mapping for this thing. I mean, all of this was done in Endu, so it's been quite a ride. Endu made my life so much easier on this project. I've covered the Endu process on this quite a few times, and as we continue doing stuff in the community, I'm gonna continue doing Endu and DD workshops. So this is not like a one-time thing. So if you guys happen to like not be here for it or something, you'll just see a different model that I'll be covering. This just happens to be a special case where this is a gigantic model. I don't think anybody really does workshops on how to do like full-size vehicles, and there's different requirements to go into painting and texturing things like this. For example, like you'll notice that even in 8K, I mean, you can't exactly get all the way up to this. So it does kind of, you kind of lose the illusion of depth when you get up too close. But it holds up really well, I'd say, for the most part. So, you know, it's kind of a tightrope with this too. You have to figure out where the detail needs to go and how much you need to actually focus on in certain areas, because there's some things you'll never see. Even at 8K, like some things here, like you can't even read some of these signs that I put on here, some of these extra decals and stuff. But some of them you can. So the bigger the sign, the more easily readable it is. But I'm still just amazed at the fact that you can actually read some of this stuff. Because I normally work in 2 and 4K at the office. That's just insane to me that like I can actually put the work into these decals that they require, and that you can actually see them. So what I'm going to do is pull up my references, and I'll show you guys what I'm doing next. So I use a tool called PureRef, and I highly recommend getting it. You can get it for free, or you can donate, however you like to go about it. But I use PureRef for pretty much for everything I do. I kind of research what I want to work with, and it's kind of sloppy because I tend to just take the images I want to work with next and just scale them up as much as I can so I don't forget that I need to work on them. What I'll do is I'll annotate them as well. So like I know, for example, that, hey, this one's got reference images that I need to look at. There's certain things like placements of decals and stuff that I'm really concerned with here. Or in this one, like I know this needs to have this particular decal in this particular place. Except this is kind of a bad example because this thing is like falling apart. It's actually some good grunge there. Or in this image, for example, I can tell that, hey, I need to add all of this here as well. So today I'm going to basically just go over the workflow for adding decals and using bump maps and Also, for those of you guys who haven't worked with a multiple mesh group setup, we're going to kind of cover that today too. So I don't know if you can hear my son in the background screaming, but I think somebody made him mad again. So again, apologies in advance. I'll try to hit the mute button if he comes in and starts screaming next to me. So right now, I've got most of these decals in place. So these auto start equipped decals. These are kind of they're kind of like all over this thing. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess it's just to let you know, hey, this thing could start up at any point in time. Don't let it run away from you. Because there's been actually there was a movie not too long ago about one of these things going off on its own, just like traveling like 80 miles an hour down. I think it was called Unstoppable. That was kind of a cool trailer for that. I want to check it out. But I need to kind of find some more stuff to add to this, so I'm going to look at these references real quick and see what else I can put in here. So give me 1 second. All right, so on the front door here, there's a piece of text that says "Watch your step," which I'm kind of surprised that you need to tell anybody that, considering it's not even that big of a step. But so we're going to add that right here. So if we go to my UVs in my Photoshop document, just toss this over here. I'm going to switch mesh groups, which you can do from this little drop down here. And it helps to name your mesh groups in a sense that's like logical, because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what's what. You can also switch mesh groups by just clicking on the mesh itself inside of 3D window. So like, for example, if I click on the chassis, it should automatically switch over. I don't think it's doing it right now. I'm not entirely sure why it's not behaving, but oh, there it goes. All right, now it's switched. So now I can easily just kind of move 3D out of the way here, and then you can see that I've got my texture map here. And there's some stuff here you'll see too that's a little off. Like I was throwing a dust layer in here, and it's a little clamped, so I'll have to go in there and paint some of that out. But so on my UVs, I know, for example, having built this thing and remembering like where my UV layout was, that this is exactly where that text is going to be placed. So with my decal setup, I actually throw a group in here just called decals. And it's a dedo group. I didn't actually make the group in Photoshop, so it's going to have a dedo tag on it. This tells the software that it's a dedo layer, essentially. So you could apply different effects and stuff to it in here with dedo. You can't do that with a normal Photoshop layer. You'll know what that is. It'll say PS next to it here in the layer groups. So let's open up the group, and we can go in here, and you can see that I've got a bunch of Photoshop layers. Pretty much everything in here except for this reflector tape is a Photoshop layer. So this is all text. It's all just color fills and paths and smart objects and all that other fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is dedo out of the way so I can see which text I'm using. And I'm going to switch to Helvetica Medium. That's usually what these guys use on these things. I'm going to switch the color to the same yellow color I used earlier. So I'm going to sample it. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Yeah, you can't click on this. By the way, the reason why I got an error is that this is not a dedo document, so it's not going to allow me to just click on that and open up the color picker. Hey, Jacob, there's no questions yet, is there?
There was one question, but I answered it in the chat. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just making sure my microphone's still working.
Yeah, it is. It is.
All right, cool. All right, so this is also upside down, but this is not a big deal. But anyway, I need to, again, I'm going to sample this color, which is A38C1D. I mean, you don't really have to remember the number. You can just copy and paste it. This is the color scheme for CSX Railroad, which is kind of a Eastern thing here in the U.S. We see them here quite a bit in Orlando, so they're naturally the guys that I'm picking to work with. Probably going to work with about a 42 pixel piece of text, and then I'm going to set this thing to make sure it's on, or it's centered essentially. I'm just going to type in "watch your step," and then fill that with the color. And this is actually probably not even bold enough, so I'm going to switch it to the bold one. There we go. Now, the reason why you're seeing dirt and other stuff on top of this layer is because I actually have the decal group below my grunge layer. So I work a little differently than some people might. If you work exclusively with smart materials, you'll notice that the way Billy had set them up is that they have dirt and grunge and other stuff built into them, and they'll make kind of a group. So within that group, it'll have dirt and whatnot. And I don't really work like that. I don't like having dirt within one material group. I like to have it as a kind of a global thing, and then I can go in there and just mask it out on top of everything else. So you see that I've got a grunge set up in here in this one folder where it contains everything that I'm kind of working with. And I did have an example like to cover basically like what I was trying to say, like masking stuff out. Like this cracked rusted paint here, like if I show you the mask for it, some of that was kind of overlapping on the rubber parts of this thing, and I really didn't want that, so I went back into Dynamask and then filled the rubber areas with black so that they would receive no or minimal rusted dirt, essentially. So back to this thing, I'm going to press T. That will take me directly back to that layer by clicking on it, and I'm going to hit V so I can move it around, and I'm going to just rotate it 180 degrees. If I hit the force refresh 3D button, it should pop right back up in a second. And again, these are all pretty simple techniques, but like I think part of the problem with decals is people tend to overthink them. And if you overthink them, you're going to be like, oh, am I doing this right? And it's like, you're fine. There's really no big deal about it. You just, as long as you have a group that you can easily find these things in, which again is my preferred workflow. But as long as you have a group that you can work in, you can keep everything contained. And this is probably too big, but you can keep everything contained within like an easy to find location. Because if you have all these like decals and stuff scattered across different materials and different groups, it's going to make editing it painful because you're going to have to go through and edit each one and then adjust everything. And it's just so much easier to work with one specific folder designed for it, just like you would any other material. So again, if you guys have questions and stuff, don't hesitate to interrupt me, or you can just ask Jacob in the chat. Either one is fine.
I'm here, waiting.
Exactly. So now, if you want your decals to have different reflectance values too, because I'm sure somebody's thinking, what happens if you don't adjust the roughness or the speck and gloss? You can actually copy these layers, and you can do it from Photoshop, which is simple enough, or you can do it directly through the D2 interface. So that's my preferred method of doing it because I can just copy to all the maps that I want individually, or not individually, in all one go essentially. So if you use the D2 menu and then you copy layer all maps, you can choose which ones they go into, and then you can just go to those and then adjust them. And I personally like to work with smart objects so that I showed Jacob this the other day, but like I'll show you how I would work with this. 1 second. Just try add like a little like object here, and then we'll convert this to a smart object. Okay, so this is basically like a Photoshop instance. So you can adjust this thing, rotate it, scale it, and no matter what you do to it, you can always go into it, and it will be the same way it was when you first converted it. But say I want this to be on all my maps. So if I was to copy later all maps, and I want this on my bump channel, but I don't want it on emissive or metalness, so I just want it on bump, albedo, and roughness. I'll propagate that to all three. And what ends up happening is that 3D will automatically update, and it'll go a little crazy because it's going to throw a black layer into the bump channel, which is going to make it look like a sunk torpedo. See what I mean? It looks really, really silly. So what you kind of need to do is, once you've propagated it to your other maps, you have to actually go into them and adjust them. And it should automatically be selected already. So since this is an individual smart object, you can actually, you'll find out that it creates instances of that in other maps. So each one of them is its own thing. So this one, I can change this one and it won't change the one in the albedo map. So I can make this like 130 RGB, so 51% in the B value, and that will make it bump out just slightly. Hit the refresh button. This will look significantly less weird. See, and I don't know if you can tell through the hangout compression, but it does bump it very slightly. And this actually does get converted to your normal map as well. So when you export this, it all gets folded into that. I loaded this up in Unreal earlier, and some of the weirdness of the bump in 3D, where it kind of looks like it's offset a little bit, is actually completely removed when you export. So, 1 second. All right. So another thing too, this thing is incredibly shiny now. I don't know if you guys can really tell or not, but another way to fix that is just to go directly to the roughness channel, and it'll automatically deselect it. And since black in the roughness channel is completely shiny, if we change this to like 85%, what'll end up happening is this turns into a essentially turns into a very matte finish. So let me exit that, come back to it, and then refresh, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And some of this, by the way, some of these decals are actually photo sourced. I like to hand make them if I can, but sometimes it's not easy to do that, so I'll just avoid doing it. But you can see now this is kind of like this decal is now very matte finished. So I'm going to take that thing out because it's just stupid looking. It's just kind of a, hey, this is how you can do it. So if we come down, remove that, go back to bump, and remove that there too. Where did I put it? Ah, there it is. Can't see it in bump.
So basically, Prem Kumar, thanks for the feedback. He told us that the workshop is amazing, as well as your project, John, is amazing, which I totally agree on.
It sounds like there's a butt coming somewhere.
Sort of. It's on the one hand the old which program is better question, which is really hard to answer, and I won't go into that.
Which it's one of is it that software which must not be named?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a personal ethos here. I don't comment on competitor software, especially that competitor. I have nothing I can add, and my opinion would be completely biased. I will say that I prefer working with Quixel Suite, not just because I get paid to do it, but because this is a tool that I've learned mostly in my own time before I started working for the company. And yes, it does have issues. Yes, it does have some problems here and there. But once you find your way around that, you'll find that it's an incredibly powerful piece of texturing software. It's, bar none, some of the best texturing I've ever done in my life. This is easier than it's ever been. Like 3D artists today have it so much better than I did when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And essentially, I mean, it really comes down to this. Software is just a tool. The artist is what matters. And this is what I said on Polycount too, and there's another one of those this versus that discussions. It doesn't matter what tool you use. If you want to do all this stuff directly in Photoshop, you can do anything that I've done here in Photoshop only, because at the end of the day, Quixel Suite in its current iteration is nothing more than a Photoshop plugin. A very fancy, very, very, very awesome Photoshop plugin, but a plugin nonetheless. Everything that you do in here can be done in Photoshop. So if all you have is Photoshop, then you can do that. If you have that other tool that you're referring to, you can make amazing artwork in that as well. But I personally believe that I think some of the best work you can make can be done in this tool. If you understand the workflow that kind of comes with a Photoshop-based workflow, then, and if you can kind of get over the fact that occasionally you're going to have processing time because it's raster-based, and that's just the way things work with raster images, then yeah. If you can forgive that and you have a decent spec computer, you can do anything you want in here.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to the tools. If you're a good artist and you're willing to learn, and you, which I'm sure you guys are because you're in here. I mean, I'm not the best artist in the world. There's way better people out there than me. But as long as you're willing to learn, and I think everybody here is, you'll find that anything that you can do is really only limited by your talent. And talent is only a factor of time multiplied by willingness to seek out new knowledge and new experiences. So anybody can draw, anybody can model, anybody can texture. it just comes down to whether or not you want to spend the time to invest yourself into it. So again, whether you want to work with this tool or you want to work with that tool, which must not be named, or you want to work with 3D Code or Mudbox. I mean, hell, I used to paint in Mudbox. I still will occasionally. It's a great painting tool. 1 second, I got somebody messaging me.
Yeah, I can basically just keep on because you also wanted to know what sort of modeling workflow you followed, whether or not you used Max or Maya. And I can answer that for you, John. Basically, John used Max for modeling. I personally use Maya. In the industry, it's sort of the standard that Maya is used for rather animation than modeling, and Max, on the other hand, is used for the opposite thing, so modeling instead of animation.
Yeah.
I can model well in Maya. I haven't really looked into Max, but I certainly think that Max is a stronger program when it comes to modeling and modeling plugins. So I'd probably suggest looking into Max if you want to model an asset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind helping out with Max as well. I've been using Max since 2001. So how many years ago was that? Roughly 15 years at this point.
A lot of years.
Yeah, I've been using it for a long time. I know many of its quirks, many of its problems, which still exist after 15 years of playing with that tool. That's another subject entirely. So yeah, I mean, again, tools are just tools. You can make anything I've made here in Blender if you wanted to, or hell, I'm sure you could do it in SketchUp if you really felt like it, if you had enough of a of a death wish. But you know, as long as you have the willingness to learn and you're going to invest the time into being a better artist, then you'll find that you can pretty much do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
The only
Totally
limitation.
agree.
So anyway, so now you can see that I've got one of these decals up here. This is all, again, basic stuff. I'll move on to something a little bit more advanced. Let me see if I can. Actually, here's something. So this decal here is actually a photo rip. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term. Since I work in the sim industry, it's something we use quite a bit. There's no reason for us to model something or paint something if it's already been done before. So you'll see in this picture, it's not this particular image that I used, but I found a close-up version of it, cropped it, took it into Photoshop, adjusted levels, and then essentially just cleaned it up as much as I could, and then tossed it in here. I'll show you the actual layer for it if you want to see it. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? It's just easier to find the location of this thing. And then another fun fact too, while you're in Photoshop, you can actually right-click on any layer or any part of the canvas, and it will show you what's directly underneath it. So underneath decals, there it is right there. So that takes me right to it. This is a smart object as well. So you can see that this came from my photo. This has been adjusted with levels. The reason being is that I want the white values to be no more than roughly, actually I need a sample from here, there we go. White values in albedo for PBR should be no more than about 70 to 75%, and that's for pure like paper, pure white paper, like as white as you can get. Like this was just bleached at the paper factory white. This is sitting at about 61%. It's been out in the sun. It's got a little bit of dirt on it. I could have probably taken this a little bit further, but since it got shrunk down from its size of roughly 800 pixels, it's fine. It does exactly what I want it. It doesn't look bad. Actually, probably could be desaturated just a little bit, so I'm going to do that while I'm still in here. So you can throw a hue saturation on here, and just, you can't see it on my screen, I have to move it over. There we go. You can take some of the saturation out of it and it'll still look good. Probably look better, actually. Working at PBR takes a little bit of a different mindset than some people may be used to. But it's definitely it's an easier way to work. It takes some adjustment. Again, you have to think about how light interacts with objects rather than how we did before with the diffuse / gloss and spec workflow, where you kind of had to fake everything in there as much as you could. But now it's less about faking it and more about getting it to be as accurate as possible to emulate actual world materials. So you'll see that I did copy this over to my roughness channel, and I copied it over to my bump channel. Can't really see it on. I can see it on my screen, but you guys probably can't see it on yours. But there's a little rectangular outline right there. And in 3D, again, this bumps out a little bit more than it should. It's kind of like offset in a strange way. We're going to look into getting that fixed up. But that's kind of how you can add normal details to your project too. Like if you don't want to take this thing back into Endu and then adjust it there, anything you add in the bump channel gets rolled into the normal map at the end. And there's pretty much no difference whatsoever. Actually, if I load up the normals that I exported, I can show you.
I might just step in between there again. Stephen C wants to know, or tells us, I have this project where I need to work in Unity 5 at the moment. Is the preset of Unity 5 alright at the moment? And I'd say yes. As far as I know, it should be pretty much dead on.
Yeah, it should be. But I don't work in Unity, so I'm not a very good. I'm not a very good. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know enough to give you a correct answer, I guess is a better way to put that. Billy, I believe, would know. But most of the presets, like the game presets, should be good to go at this point. So.
Yeah, and if you have any questions that we can't instantly answer, just feel free to post them in our live support group on Facebook.
Yeah.
We'll get to you there too, and we have all our material masters like Billy and our programmers to back us up so we can give you proper and correct answers on your questions.
Exactly. Okay, so I still have that stupid little rectangle that I made popping up in my bump map and in my roughness map, so I need to remove that. Oh, I took that out already. There it is. So that is strange that it's still there. I could have sworn I took that out. Oh, wait, I think I know what that is. Oh. Oh, wow, I think I screwed something up. I think no, I know exactly what happened. I deleted one of the textures on that. You know what, I'm actually going to cancel everything I've done here so far, and I'm going to exit this and not save. Because I haven't done anything serious with it yet. I just realized I deleted one of my layers accidentally.
That happens to the best.
Yeah, I'm focused on talking, and I kind of forget what I'm doing. No big deal. Again, as long as you don't hit save, you shouldn't have a problem. So, pulling it right back up.
When Houghton wants to know if we're going to put this online, we won't. But
there is actually somebody currently recording it.
Yeah.
But these are not normally recorded. Hangout sessions are just an informal kind of meeting where I'll just come in here and say, hey, you want to learn something? I've got some stuff I can talk to you about. This should not and is not or should not ever be considered to be a professional production. This is just kind of us interacting as a community. If I was running this on the official Twitch channel, it would definitely be more hands-off. Like you guys would be kind of segregated away and into a point where you're just like typing into a chat channel. And I mean, because at any point you guys can talk. There's nothing wrong with that right now. But yeah. In the other in the Twitch format, there's no way you can talk to us, so you have to type. So essentially, yeah, I mean, it's not official, so we don't really go out of our way to record this because it's just kind of an unofficial meetup and just trying to help you guys like, you know, come up with the terms of the software. If you have any questions, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but also, well, Quinn apparently will upload it to YouTube and will link it in the tools group too.
Yeah, which is nice of him to do that.
Yeah, thanks again, Quinn. Very nice.
Although, I mean, we tend to get a little crass in here sometimes, so it's kind of nice not having that saved for future posterity. You know. So, yeah, here's a layer I actually deleted. It's a good thing I didn't save because I'd have to go back and do all that again. So, but I think I lost all my window edits that I had done before we started this thing, so, whatever. It's not like I can't go back and do it again. So, So you guys have kind of seen how we do decals, or at least how I do them. Like I said, try not to overthink it too much. It's not really hard to uh, add them in. You know, lost one of the decals that I added earlier. There we go. So just keep that in mind while you work. A lot of things can be done directly in Photoshop if you want to. It's very simple to adjust things, very simple to add things. It doesn't always have to be done through the D2 interface. That's what the copy mask to all maps feature is for. Definitely makes it simpler to adjust and work iteratively. A lot of this was done just in Photoshop. Most of these decals are all Photoshop work. It's much simpler than creating a new layer in D2 and then attempting to what's the way to describe it? Then attempting to use Dynamask to just paint in the details there, when you can just do it in Photoshop. So, and again, the tool is based around Photoshop, so I mean, it does seamlessly work with the edits you've made in there. If you're the kind of person who likes to work with levels adjustments and hue saturation layers and all that other fun stuff, you can do that as well. I wouldn't really recommend it though. It's not as forthcoming with the way we work. There's no real need to desaturate things. Like in D2, you can just do it via the color adjustments and whatnot. You can just like click on one of the color pickers and just adjust that there rather than globally. So let me finish saving this thing and then we'll move on. So for those of you guys who, I'm going on some crunch here, but like, if you're curious why this looks like this, I'll show you why. This will kind of cover some custom Dynamasking. Most of this has been done through custom masking rather than through the presets that exist. So I'm actually going to do this without opening up 3Do. You can easily do that by holding down Alt and then left-clicking on the mask, and that will bypass the message asking you to, if you want to work in full shaded mode. So you can see my mask here. It looks a little goofy. That's because I'm working with ambient occlusion that I've kind of clamped as hard as I can. And I believe there's something else I was doing to this too, but let's see. Yeah. But if you hold down Alt while you slide things around, you can see that everything adjusts really quickly when you work like this. So it's a very easy way to work. Definitely makes minor adjustments kind of simple. You just have to keep your Photoshop window open, or if you're like me and you have 3 monitors, you can just keep Photoshop up on one of them while you work. But a lot of people, I think, they're kind of hesitant to work inside of the Dynamask sliders. There's some really powerful stuff in here. The only reason why this continues to stay pure white here is because this is really black in my ambient occlusion map. So if I was to invert that, this is what it really looks like. So yeah, like this is underneath the train. It's actually on top of the fuel tank. So I could probably go in here and paint it out. We're probably going to have to do anyway, because this is more of just like a dust layer. It's going to be kind of a, what do you call it, like a fine white dust from just wherever this thing has gone, just picking up crud and crap on its journey. So let's invert that again. So when you invert your ambient occlusion, what you're basically doing is making your black values turn white, and that will then be where your dust and dirt tends to accumulate anyway. And if you pair that with some curvature, or even your displacement map, which is essentially your curvature map, unless you added a height map to it, I'll show you how that works too. So if I set this to linear dodge, and then come in here and adjust the brightness, you should see some, here, let's turn this down. Actually, you know what? Here's what we can do. Start off with black, turn the AO back on, invert this, and then make this screen. There we go. Put the blur back where it was. There we go. So again, what I was trying to say with the displacement map, let me pull this back up and set this to linear dodge. There we go. Now it's working. The background was pure white. That's why it wasn't showing up, so I had to readjust it. And again, if you guys are familiar with Photoshop editing, you need to keep that in mind while you work with your Dynamask sliders, because it is very much a Photoshop workflow. Everything in here is using Photoshop blend modes and whatnot. So if you linear dodge against a black background, you're going to get white, as long as you have white or values of gray. And you can pretty much adjust anything in here as well. Like this, this height map is essentially my curvature map. It's just not as customizable, but it is an extra effect you can add if you don't want pure curvature, if you want something that's kind of blurred out a little bit. This comes with it. Dedo will automatically generate it. See how it kind of gets a little harsher looking as you adjust the contrast. You can. I'm going to try to build like a dust out of this if I can. If not, I can do it through the regular curvature. I can do it through gradients and all sorts of other different tools. But this will probably work for what I want. And in fact, I could probably even turn the AO map down as well while bringing the brightness up on this. There we go. And then I also probably want to work with my gradient direction as well to kind of mask this out a bit more. As you can see, this is the top and this is the bottom. So if I change the direction of the top, this will now be black. And if I change the offset here, this will start forcing the dust layers down. And then I can balance it out a little bit more so it focuses on the bottom. And then you can even set this down to multiply, or you can set it to screen. You can pretty much do anything you want with these layers. It's not going to clamp too well with this displacement map turned on, though. So I'm going to turn that off. Now you can see it's kind of doing more of what I want, getting richer values out of this, essentially. So let's try changing this a little bit more. And a lot of this comes down to trial and error, too. Don't always expect to get the perfect mask from the first go. I mean, I may actually end up canceling this and trying something different as I'm working on it. But again, if you guys have questions on anything you want to see me do in here, don't hesitate to ask. You can even speak up if you want. Nobody's going to judge you, so don't worry. It's really all about you guys. If you want to learn something, we're here to help out. So change that to screen. There we go. This is kind of more of what I want to see now. When I set it to screen, it's actually functioning more as a mask rather than as a kind of like a canceller. If I turn on my curvature, I might get some better effects out of this too. Now, if you want this to kind of like blend into rather than blend through, you can use different layer effects as well. Linear dodge, for example, is going to blend through rather than with. So if you set this to overlay, it will blend with. See how that works? So
that looks beautiful.
Yeah, but this is way too it's too uniform, even for dust, which is kind of a uniform coating in some cases. So, well, thank you for the compliment. It needs to be pushed a bit more. So what we can do is we can come back into the AO map and we can try to make this a little darker. Actually, turn that down. Okay. That will work for right now. I don't want these. This is the side of it, and I don't want the dust flying up the side of this thing. I want it to kind of collect in the crevices. So I'm going to try to find a way to mask that out. So if I come in here and change my curvature map, if I start working with some of these sliders, I can probably get, actually, here we go, cavities. All right. If I even set this to multiply, that might work. No, something in here is not really doing what I want. So let me set that back to screen, or overlay, rather. Okay, so it's either the gradient direction that's, yeah, I think it's actually this. All right, let's turn the AO map down. Okay, so it's all coming from the AO map, apparently, and this is being set to screen. Let's try overlay this time around. Nope, that's not going to do what we want. What about vivid light? No, that's not going to do it either. Maybe linear? Okay. Actually, no, that's a little closer. That's way too bright. Here we go. Let's try this.
Okay, Prem Kumar wants to know whether or not we can talk about portfolio now or maybe later.
Portfolios?
Yeah.
In what sense of the word would we want to talk about portfolios?
That's a good question.
This is more of a DD workshop rather than a portfolio workshop, although I will answer questions if you have any about that. That's not a problem. I'm already here, so it's no big deal. Okay. Now let's try turning the curvature map back on here. There we go. Am I getting something here?
Well, thanks, Wanautan, for the kind words. We do appreciate it. Yeah, just make sure to check in next time.
What were the words?
What?
What was that being said? I missed it.
No, Wanautan just thanks so much, guys, for everything. Got to run. Really appreciate this. We'll be more talkative next time with some questions.
That's fine. You know, it's here for you guys. So let me go ahead and just cancel this out. I'll come back to this later on. I'm not getting any satisfying map just yet. The way I want this dust to kind of sit on here is going to be something I'm probably going to have to spend some time working on. So we'll just leave it alone for now. Let me look at the chat. I haven't actually seen what's going on. All right, well, let's swap back. So let me open up 3D here. This might take a second to load. It's loading up pure 8K maps and all that fun stuff. So it's going to be a little slow. If I start sounding like a robot too, let me know. I'll have to refresh.
Yeah, it's fine for now. It's fine for now.
That's good.
I'll warn you.
Good. Good. Oh, wow. Okay. Looks like we lost a couple of people, so that means we got some more space for other people to come in.
Yeah, when Hao was going to run, and
that's fine. All right. So the area that I was working with a second ago, where this is all kind of collecting in here, it's also up in here as well. But not too thrilled with how it's looking just yet. But we'll get to that point eventually. Peanut normals. So the entire time I spent on this model, I would say it's been probably 3 months of work. Cumulatively working maybe about 8-hour days. It'd be about 2 to 3 months of work. That sounds about right. There's been some lessons learned where I could speed this up, but I mean this thing was a giant project, and I was trying to make it as accurate as I could. If I was working at the office, I would have had to have this done within 2 weeks, more than likely. So definitely would not have had as much time to just experiment as I have here. So here's something else we can do. I know these things are looking a little cruddy, so let's work on these guys. All right, so there's a dust layer on this thing too. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just not the right type of dust. Let's change the color on that.
Stephen Sear wants to know something, and he wants to know, or he said, I'm making a brick wall, and first made the normal, then made an AO and height map out. After importing those 3 into data, I wanted to make an old brick-like wall for a Babylonian building. Would the method of what you are doing right now work for those bricks?
If you're making a custom material, I haven't really covered that yet. So I can't really imagine any of the methods I've covered here covering that. But, I mean, importing those into, I don't think you'd have any problem. As long as you're working with, some grunge layers and some other stuff trying to make it pop out, I think it should be fine. It would help if I had some examples of what you're talking about, though. I'm just trying to visualize this in the top of my head. So here we go. This is something I forgot to do. So these little pieces right here are actually the the bearings that hold the axles together on these wheel assemblies, and they often tend to leak, but not this much. This is just like a quick, hey, let's throw this on here before I forget to do it later. So I'll show you how I 3D paint some of this stuff in here to try to build it up and make it look kind of interesting. So when you click on Dynamask and you paint in full shaded mode like this, it makes it significantly easier to kind of figure out what you're trying to work with. It also helps to work with the custom brushes as well. There's a whole bunch of them in here. I'm kind of a fan of soft-edged brushes, although a variety of them can work for whatever effect you're trying to go for. Give it a second here. It's catching up and switching masks on me. There it goes. But you can see this one is kind of nice, but this is way too big for what I'm trying to do. And painting with this, I don't think it's going to work out too well. So let's clear that out. And set spacing down. There we go. Yeah, you can see that's a little too big and doesn't quite look all that good. Plus the normals in this thing are a little too strong. Let me turn that down before I keep working here. One second. There we go. All right, so I'm going to switch to a different brush, something that's a little bit more buildable here. Let's try.
I'm actually amazed how well this looks in metalness.
What do you mean?
Well, they transitions from like metal to non-metal materials, etc. And you have so much dirt on this thing as of it right now. So I'm really impressed actually how well it looks in or with metalness workflow. I actually thought it was just regular specular workflow.
No, this is definitely Unreal Roughness. So I can come in here and I can kind of quickly brush in these details that I want, like block out certain areas. These things are gross. I mean, the way these things pick up and accumulate oil and grease and whatnot, they tend to spill this stuff out and it kind of gets all over the place. So I don't want it to be too perfect, but at the same time, I don't want it to be completely covered in crud. So if we use the mask, it'll probably help out visualize what I'm doing. Now, those of you guys who aren't aware, fix seams doesn't mean that it fixes texture seams. It fixes painted seams. So when I click that, those lines go away. That's all it means. Just for those of you guys who didn't know. Also, having normal aligned painting can help prevent stretching as you paint, because it will force the brush to focus on the normal direction of the area that you're working with, so you're aware. The way I had it before, it was camera aligned, so if I wasn't painting at a 45-degree angle here, it would have actually stretched the paint. And the poly count for this project is 139,000 altogether. That's without the interior. So it's a little on the high side, but for modern games, that's probably not even a problem. I think some of the character models in recent games have been closer to, what's the best way to describe it? I think it's like 100,000 for characters now.
Yeah, and especially with DirectX 612 coming out.
Oh, really?
It's yeah. There were some great demos of real-time people in game with around 12 million polygons on them, and it's quite epic actually. But of course, you need to have a base machine for that to run properly.
What kind of a machine are we talking about here?
Well, I think they used 2 GTX Titans.
Nice.
And I don't know, I think actually a rather normal high-end processor like the i7-4790K. And I think 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM, and that basically was it. Very cool.
Very cool. I love how But it's nice that with us working with this company, we're basically on the forefront of like the cutting edge of texturing.
Yeah.
So much cool. And Jacob's seen some things that you guys are just going to be blown away by.
Indeed.
You guys have no idea what the future's going to hold, but I think you're really going to like it. That's all I can really say. I wish I could say more, but you'll see soon. So.
Yeah, okay, Stephen. Have a great day or evening. I don't know where you live.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys can feel free to jump out anytime. Other people will want to jump in, so we'll free it up for everyone to kind of come in and hang out, talk, and whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm just coming in here and I'm just kind of like laying down some grease here and there, trying to visually break this thing up a little bit. So realistically, it probably isn't covered in this much grease, but I think it makes for a better look in the end. Just to avoid having the typical like, oh, look at this, it was done with whatever software look. So it was made with Dedo doesn't mean it has to look like it was. It was a common complaint with the old Dedo as well, is that people would often just run like a preset on something and then call it quits. Didn't really customize it and make it their own. And with this tool, you really have like so many more options for customization. Like the 3D painting aspect of it is probably one of the best parts of the software. The painter is very powerful. As you can see, I'm able to come in here and paint in materials in real time. I mean, there's very few other softwares that can do what I've been doing, which is, this is a 4K mesh that I'm working on right now, but the main body itself is 8K, and it's just as fluid going between 4K and 8K. No problems at all. It's very quick. Undoing takes, like hitting the undo button takes like a brief moment, but it's not even a big deal. I find it's easier to just like erase what I painted rather than it is to undo, so oftentimes I don't even use it. So I don't know how you feel about that or not, Jacob.
It is surely amazing because it really gives you the freedom to experiment around, and just painting on your 3D mesh, it's a breeze.
Yeah,
it's really fun actually. It sort of gives you back the artistic feel of working with software basically. It really makes you sort of get your hands dirty, and metaphorically speaking, and really get into that and just have some fun with it actually.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of different settings you can use here. Like I've got this based on flow, so I'm using my opacity controlled by the strength of my brush, like how hard I'm pressing with my tablet. I've got normal align painting set up over here, and I've also got the size of my brush set to how strong I'm pressing as well. So it really lets me kind of build up slowly. It's almost like a dry brush effect. Not quite close, but close enough where it's not. It looks worse in the mask, but when you overlay it on your materials, it looks perfectly fine. So, and that's really the end result we're kind of looking for, is making sure that the material itself looks good. Yeah, I think that's really selling the look more, is having some more grease and stuff on here. And this model itself has quite a few stacked UVs. So what I've been painting on one side happens to get painted on the other. So, of course, if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't even noticed. These things are incredibly dirty, except for the wheels. The wheels are always usually pretty pristine, relatively speaking, because they get ground up by the rolling action.
Yeah.
So they tend
nice
to be
and polished.
Yep. And that's something you see with rail lines too. If it's a frequently used rail line, the railroad line or the rails themselves, the heads of the rails are quite clean.
Yeah.
Incredibly clean. In comparison to the rest, which is usually like really rusty. And I'll be making some modular railroad pieces for this thing too. So I'm going to be building a little environment for it, which I think
that looks so nice. That will look so nice. Can't wait.
Yeah, I got a lot of other stuff to do too, but Fun to work on something besides this thing for a change.
Yeah.
But people seem to like it, so it brings a crowd. Kind of like when we had Billy doing materials on the live stream last time.
Yeah.
So
No, that looks cool.
yeah, just little breakups here and there to try to keep the surface from looking too matte and perfect.
John, do you use any sculpting software for damaging your mesh like Mudbox or ZBrush?
Nope, this was all done with Max and Endu and Dedo. And a lot of the damage that I've done to this model, like these dents you see here, that was all done with Dedo too. It's just using a steel layer and then only painting in where I want the damage to show up. So it gives the impression that it's been beat up, but without having to take it through a sculpting program. So
that again just shows the power of Dedo combined with Endu.
Mm-hmm. Like I could have done the damage in Endu too when I was doing the live streaming. Could have just taken like textures. Like I mean, Victor's done it too with some of the tutorials he's done. But you can just take textures and just overlay it on here, and then use that as a as your what do you call it? As your damage layer.
Yeah.
But I prefer not to do that. I think it looks silly having pre-damage stuff because then you're kind of locked into that no matter what. I would prefer to import a custom material myself. Actually, you know what? I might even show you guys how to do that to make your own damage stuff.
Yeah.
That's a
Go
good
ahead.
idea. Let me exit this mask and save what I've got because I kind of like what I've got so far. But I've got some really cool textures from way long ago, probably from like 2002, but they're still relatively good. See if I can find them. They used to be in here. They were from NVIDIA, back when NVIDIA still released texture packs. It's called the Transmogrifying Texture Pack in Volume 1, I believe. And let's see here. They only went up to 1024, so they weren't like the best textures ever, but let me move this over here. If I load this in here, for example, this grind texture, oh, it's a DDS. Damn it, I can't load DDS files. I don't have the DDS plugin. I'll have to do that later then. Here's what I'll do. Let me go to CG Textures real quick.
Oh, CG Textures, that website.
I don't really care about the, it's not about the albedo map that I'm worried about. I just want something I can make a normal map out of really quick.
Yeah.
So I'll just take this into Endu. So we got a metal, right? We can go to something that would work for this. Something that's got some denting in it. Let's try bare. This is a great resource for just, here we go. This would probably work. So if I open this up. Some of these panels are actually probably perfect for what I want to do. So let me log in real quick. One moment. Okay, take me back to my texture, and I'm going to download one of those, and then I'm going to turn that into a material. It won't be a very big one, but it should be enough to kind of sell the impression here. Okay, so I've got this thing downloaded now. It's kind of small, but I'll show you my workflow for converting this stuff over. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically desaturate this because it's got a useless color in it. I'm going to crop this right here. So this will probably end up being a 512. Although I could potentially turn it into a 1024 if I was to take some of the other parts of this texture. But this will probably be fine for what we need to do. Some of the details in this are going to be small anyway. So if we change the image size to 512, and then come in here, filter, offset, 256 by 256. And then we can come in with a healing brush tool and kind of just spot heal some of the stuff out. Use your, you can use the clone stamp tool too, but the spot healing brush is pretty good for this. If you do it like very randomly, you can kind of get rid of that. Hey, look, this was done with a clone stamp effect. So it tends to look a little more natural. And don't be afraid to like go over certain areas too to try to get rid of them to make it blend in better. There we go. And the beautiful thing about like this brush too, the healing brush tool, is that it tends to preserve details rather than remove them. Especially if you set it just right. Like there's different settings you can use. Like you can do, like I'm doing normal right now, but you can do like screens that only replaces like dark stuff, which is really cool. But I want to get rid of that stuff in the center there, that little double line, because I don't want that popping up in my normal map. Okay. So if I come in here and I finish this thing up and bring it into Undo, you see what I'm talking about. There. That should tile now. That line actually probably needs to go too, so let me brush that out real quick. Like for some reason, I think with all these textures loaded, Photoshop's going crazy. So like occasionally it's making my brush strokes go gigantic. But it's behaving itself now, so it should be okay. Yep, there's one of them right there. Okay, this will be fine for what I'm doing. All right, so if I click the Undo button, I'm going to convert this to a normal. And I could use the photo normal presets to do this, but I'd rather just do it by hand. I get a bit more control over it that way. So I'm going to make this as big as I can, or as big as necessary anyway, because I want this to be large details that are kind of like push this thing out. Set the curve to half round, so it's a little sharper. Set the bevel to, not groove, but rather emboss. And the opacity to 100, and set the depth down. I don't want these to be overbearing shapes, I just want them to be there. Now if I hit Control D, I can duplicate this layer, set it to overlay, and then I can make this a little bit smaller, and then change the beveling to inner, and then change the depth down to 100. Duplicate again. Log. Set the size down to 5. Set the depth up a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe even more than that. Change the fall off a little bit. There we go. Kind of just sharpen it up just enough. And then one more. I'm going to set this to 1. So I got a little bit of that fine detail in there. And then I'm going to take that fine detail and soften it. So I don't want this to be super sharp. It's going to be 512. So flatten that down. Control-Shift-S. Throw this in my textures library. And then I'm going to take this into Dedo now. I'm going to close this material out. And then inside of Dedo here, I'm going to open up the material importer. So this will then load 3D in the default material import category. So it looks like a sphere with some cool effects on it. And from here, I'm going to do nothing more than just add a normal map to it. So we can go back to my textures folder, and then we can load up photo normal. You can see the normal I just made. A little blurry because it's only a 512, but I'll scale that down. And then we're going to create this. We're going to call this image metal 512. And then 3D will then render it out, and then I'll bring it into Dedo, and then we'll be able to work. So close that out, close that one out, and switch back to the chassis group. Open up 3D one more time. And this is kind of how you can do sculpted detail without sculpting, by the way. Anything you can sculpt, you can pretty much do in 2D. It won't always be as good looking, but there's ways you can get around that. So on this, let's say I want some of this to be like microsurface detail. Like I want that to kind of bump this a bit more on this. This is like a kick plate, so people tend to hit this thing with their feet, and it's not very thick metal, so eventually over time it starts to wear down. So what we'll do is we'll go into the normal map. Not that it matters, but I'm going to have to edit it anyway. And this is going to be under my grunge. So I'm going to then add that material. So if I go to my custom materials, you'll see damaged metal 512, and then go ahead and create. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the opacity for everything but the normal layer to nothing. So the simple way to do that is to hold Control while adjusting the opacity layer. So while we wait for the new layer to create.
Yeah, there also is a new question. Basically, have you ever been frustrated of exporting and plugging all those textures into an external renderer or another program?
Where'd you see that at?
From
I
Command.
see it now. Yeah. No, I mean I've never really had any problem with that. I kind of look forward to it, being able to export and import my stuff. It's quite a bit of fun. Okay.
And basically, the comparison between Dedu or like a path tracer or basically in general real-time rendering versus path tracers, it really depends on what you want and especially what you need.
Yeah. So real quick though, I'm going to hold down Control, going to slide over to 0. That's going to adjust everything to 0. So all of the maps for that particular layer are going to be set to 0. So you'll see it disappear entirely. And since we're in the normal layer, after that's done updating, which should be right now, just force it to update. Sorry about cutting you off, Jacob, by the way.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay, so now you can see that the normal layer itself is now gone. I have to wait for 3D to catch up for a second. This project is massive, so it's kind of slowing down my system a little bit. This is one of the reasons why I was kind of like curious about whether or not I should stream it. So what I'm going to do now is set the opacity back up by not holding Control. If I don't hold Control, what will happen is only the normal app will be affected. See? So this, frankly, looks like plastic-wrapped crap. But we're going to fix that. So we don't need this much normal detail, but that simple CG textures does actually kind of look like this thing was sculpted, doesn't it? In the sense that somebody took this and ran it through a crushed paper filter. So what we're going to do here is change the texture intensity. So I'm going to change this to about 15.
I mean, you can probably scale it down too, can't you?
Yes, I plan on doing that as well.
Ah, beautiful.
Maybe I'll get away with not doing that, because this actually isn't too terrible. Let's set the scale to -1 though, just in case. The nice thing about these decals being on different layers too, by the way, is that they do inherit the normal map above it. So this is actually this decal looks like it's been kind of bent. So, all right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to enter the Dynamask for this. And I'm going to set it to be black. And I'm only going to paint in where I want these bumpy microsurface details to pop out. So grab my tablet and start working. Of course, I have to wait for 3D to catch up first, though. Just to give you an idea of how big this project really is, the last time I checked the project folder, it was 12 gigabytes. Each PSD is 1 gigabyte.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're poor little PC, man.
That's why I have 32 gigs of RAM. Okay, so Dynamask is about to pop up. Now, this is one of the arguments people say when they're like, oh, well, Dedu is slow. I'm like, it's not slow. I challenge you to find any other software out there that can work this fast at this resolution with this many textures.
Yeah.
And yeah, and still be fluid at the same time. It's very difficult to find that. Sure, there's ways to improve it, but I think it's doing pretty good. All right, so I'm going to start off with like a kind of a soft brush for this. I don't need anything too fancy. I'm going to enter the mask, click on black. Okay. Now this thing is gone completely. So I can now come in here and paint normal details and where I want them to be. Pretty cool, huh? But the spacing on that brush isn't really what I wanted. It wasn't as fluid. Now it is. That's still too crazy on the like the intensity of that particular normal, so I'm going to change it back to probably 7, about half of what it was. That's the thing with normal maps. A little bit goes a long way, so keep that in mind while you work. See?
Yeah, way better.
That still reads, and it's not overbearing. And I can come in here through this entire project and quickly just kind of lay in those normals to add even more surface definition to this thing, exactly where I want it, every single time. And I can even paint out some of the parts, so I don't want it to be everywhere, but I do want it to be in some points that kind of indicate that a person's been working with this, or maybe they haven't been as nice to it as they should have been. Maybe somebody ran into this thing with a steel beam at one point. Somebody drove into it with their car. You'd be surprised how many times trains hit things on the track. People think they can beat the train.
That's never a good idea, I think. Never.
Doesn't have to be Soviet Russia for train to beat you. Tell you that. And the results of the train beating you are never pretty.
No, at least not on you. The train pretty much looks good after all, but everything that was in front, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen videos of these things hitting school buses and stuff, and it just like tears it apart like a like a fucking tin can.
Yeah. It's so much mass just plunging through there. It's really devastating.
We'll say this pilot in the front here has hit a couple of cars in its time. So it's got some dents here and there. There you go. And every little bit of breakage on this thing, every little bit of surface indentation kind of tells a story in itself too. Kind of makes these things look more interesting. So anything you can do to break up the surface without being unrealistic is generally a good thing in my book. Oftentimes too, this thing, you'd be surprised, like this particular locomotive can go through like different owners, and each one of them can be like, I don't like the way this thing looks, I'm going to take lights out of the front here. Like sometimes they'll actually have like welded seams that you'll see right here where there used to be lights in the front. And then like when CSX, for example, takes it over, they're like, I don't want those lights on there, I'm going to take them out. And then you just see like the leftover welds on the front when they were removed. And this thing was made back in like the 60s. I think they stopped making these in like 89. So they're very reliable, and they've been around forever. So
yeah, it's sort of the stereotype of an American train, actually.
what, tough and reliable?
No, like the optic of this one. Like this sort of model. If you go around in Germany and show this model to just random strangers on the streets, they'd be like, oh yeah, American train, whoop whoop.
Whoop. Nothing wrong with that. This is actually the reason why I chose to work on this one is because it's the most ubiquitous American train out there. So, like, this is, generally speaking, when you think of a freight train, this is the model that comes to most people's mind.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's something about it that looks actually really, really cool.
Yeah, that's another reason why I picked it too. It's just that the nose design and everything is just, they kind of got it perfect with this one. The other ones I don't really like as much. They look a little weird.
I mean, it's weird because technically speaking, it's just boxes on top of boxes, and it should look really bulky, but somehow it doesn't.
In a way, it kind of is really bulky too.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like just somebody slapped some boxes together and just called it a train.
Yeah. Well, there has to be a little bit of aerodynamicness to it too, like for fuel efficiency and whatnot.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of photo ripping too, this little piece right here is photo ripped. It's one of the environmental plaques that says what the like efficiency is on the fuel and whatnot.
Good research, man. Good research.
Oh, good photoshopping too, considering I just stole it. I don't see the point in reinventing the wheel. If something's already been done, I'm going to use it. I mean, I'll make something myself if I have to, but generally speaking, if it's already been done, I don't really see a big point in completely redoing it. So, kind of going through and adding all these little dents and stuff too, I think really adds some character to this thing, because otherwise it just looks too perfect.
It's basically just breaking up shapes and forms and patterns, and it makes it look more organic. It's always good when you're working in 3D with generated textures.
Yeah. Hey, my pool guy's here.
You're a pool guy. Oh man.
Yeah. I had the motor on my pool died, so like I had to get it replaced. They're quoting me like $400 for it.
Oh.
It's not that bad.
I wish I had a pool guy and a pool to begin with.
Why would you want that? It's cold up there. You don't need a pool where you live.
Well, Berlin is rather warm actually. I mean,
warm?
well, about in the summer can get up to 35 to, well,
Are you serious?
maybe
You can
40.
You can't get to 100 degrees. Get out of here.
Oh, we can.
How long?
Pretty long actually. Berlin has continental weather, so it's really weird because I'm coming from the north, and basically we have like a few days of summer where when we're lucky we get around 35 degrees Celsius for a few weeks.
For a few weeks. That's it. That's it.
And the rest would be just crappy weather like rain and around 10 degrees. But in Berlin, actually, around Christmas, we really have winter. Like, it snows. It's really, really damn cold.
Okay, you want to know how hot it is here?
I'm probably feeling bad about complaining.
It's 32.3 outside right now. It feels like 33. And tomorrow it'll be 33. Monday it'll be 32. Tuesday it'll be 31. You know, in fact, it won't go below 30 probably for the rest of this, like, next 4 or 5 months.
I'm not jealous of you. Let's put it that way.
Neither am I. I wish I lived in Europe. I wish I did. It'd be nice. It's cool, and I could ride my bike and not sweat like crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of one of the things I'm pushing for too. If we end up opening another Quixel office, and I think it's in Gothenburg. Gothenburg. It's on the west coast of Sweden.
Okay. Understood. Luxembourg.
I don't know, Gothenburg. I'll end up like demanding that we get like showers and stuff so I can bike in. At that point, I'll be like, "Yep, I'm moving. Time to come and pack it up and head over there."
I mean, would be cool. Then
And we could hang out.
I still have to do the trip to Sweden.
It's not like it's very far for you.
No, it isn't. It would be like maximum a 6-hour drive. Like maximum. And I mean, Billy still owes me
A beer.
a beer, so I think I have to go there.
Yeah. So with this, like, I'm kind of, again, I'm just going through here and adding indentations and stuff and just kind of breaking up the surface. So if anybody came in and just recently got here, this is actually a custom normal map that I created just now from a CG texture. And with that CG texture, I'm just like adding normal details all over this thing just to break it up some more. CG textures has not gone away just yet. It's still useful for some things. Mostly normal maps. That's about it.
Yeah, or when you're drawing and you need some photo textures just to sell some detail that actually isn't just there.
Yeah,
I think my English just died.
What's that?
Oh boy. I said I think my English just bit again.
That's okay.
I hope so. I hope so.
So mostly done here. But I think I'll add some normal detail on these grills as well. Because these things tend to get bent and busted and broken.
Yeah.
And clogged with dirt, too. That's one of the things my best friend was like looking at this. He's like, man, I really liked it when you had all that clogged-looking dirt on there. Add that back in a minute. I don't want it to be completely clogged. These are like intakes for the engine. They have to be relatively clean in some cases, but I do want some more normal detail on this whole thing. And I was really happy, too, when this thing got featured by Polycount. That was my first Polycount feature that I actually ever got. So I was like, yeah, man, this is badass.
I mean, was deserved. This thing is actually really badass.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate the kind words.
Well, I mean, I have to give some kind words back after the words you wrote about the vaporizer.
Yes, your vaporizer.
Yeah.
But you did knock it out of the park with that thing, honestly. I mean, the amount of detail you put into that stupid thing is just... Even somebody who hates Star Wars with the passion of 1,000 suns like me has to admit that was a really good model.
Yeah,
even for generic run-of-the-mill vaporizer, it was pretty good.
Oh man, it'll just... I think I'll rename it on ArtStation, etc., and just call it the vaporizer.
You should, with that smoky texture you put on it.
Hi, Pavel. Sorry, I missed that little bit of chat there. I'm sorry.
So again, I see a couple guys just joined up. This is actually going through the process of having created, having found a use for CG textures. I created a normal map from it using Endu, and I'm using that normal map to come in here and add in some extra busted up detail to these doors and the rest of this locomotive to kind of sell the metallic, hey, this thing has been used and probably not in the best of condition look, but still in relatively good operating condition. I'd say it looks pretty cool, personally. It's one of the things I like about trains, too, is when you see them go by, you can really realize how dented they are. Like, you don't get it until you get a video of them going by you, and then you see, like, these things are just, like, are all wavy in the reflections and stuff from how much abuse they can get.
I mean, even the new ones, or the new passenger trains, like the ICE in Germany, it looks super clean at the first glance, and then you look at it a bit more in depth, sort of, and it just looks like somebody took a sledgehammer and just went nuts on it.
Yeah, and that's a lot to do with the fact that it's sheet metal.
Yeah,
the sheet metal bends and bows as it gets bolted to stuff. So generally speaking, you'll see more of it around bolts from where the bolts are kind of indenting, which is why I'm kind of like going over some of them with this and trying to make it pop out more. So as you look at it, you'll see some of the bolts are actually indenting the metal in. And it's just little subtle details like that. And that stuff really sells the look of a model when you pay attention to everything, not just like the macro shapes, but also the micro shapes. I think a lot of that is really important.
Yeah.
It's good too to go over like edges and stuff, break up some of those perfect reflections on them. And these hard edges here.
Yeah.
So
Hyper ultra super realistic. Good job.
thank you. Thank you very much.
That's a nice comment, actually.
I've got my painting option set up so I can kind of dry brush some of the stuff in there, so it's not too like overbearing. Just enough to give it some ideal definition. I like having the metal around that plate sink in a little bit, but I don't like having the plate sink in too. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'll be done with this part in a minute here, at least for now. I actually really enjoy this. It's almost like therapeutic in a sense. You come in here and just like you really put let's say you put like your artistic eye to the test because you have to think about everything that goes into it now. You can't just be like, oh well, I'm just gonna kind of be like, whatever. I'm just gonna throw it everywhere I want to go. Woo! kind of have to like really think about the way these things are built. Brush size changing would be nice too. There we go. That's better. So, but yeah, I mean, this is all fluid 8K painting too. I don't know if you guys have noticed that or not, but this is actually being done in real time with an 8K texture. So, I mean, that in itself is, I'd say, kind of remarkable because there's not a lot of software out there that can do what I just did. So,
it still really impresses me. I mean, I've drawn my vaporizer in 8K with only.
that will never not be funny to me. I'm sorry.
I know. It even became funny to me. That's the sad thing, actually.
Oh, it's not sad. It's funny.
I find it kind of sad that I call my own creation a vaporizer.
It's kind of what it is, though. If you hadn't put that smoke coming out of it. But go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
Yeah. What did I? Yeah, exactly. I was painting it in 8K too, but I only had 16 gigabytes of RAM. But the fact that you can adopt some settings in the suit in a way
Sweet.
that you can actually sweet. I'm sorry. Again, the German kicks in.
Can you say the rest of this in German accent?
In German accent.
Yes.
Oh please, don't do this to me.
Okay, don't do it. It's being recorded. You don't have to embarrass yourself.
Maybe next time. But the fact that you can adjust the suite in a way that you can fluently work in 8K with only 16 gigabytes of RAM is actually really amazing.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the big selling points too. Is that your system limitations shouldn't affect everything. I mean, you can paint in 8K, but you may have to only work with one mesh group, as an example.
Yeah.
It's now 33C outside. It feels like 34. So now you see this fuel tank here? Like I've kind of gone through here and see these reflections here on this thing. I've actually gone through and I've broken it up so it's not so perfect.
Looks absolutely sweet, man.
Thank you. But it's like...
Oh, you're welcome.
It's little things like that, like going from this to that I think sell the look of the model.
Yeah.
Because this thing does get dented up, and then you get like rocks kicking up and hitting it and stuff like that, and maybe you ran over a deer or something. I can only imagine what happens to a deer when a locomotive of this size hits it. It probably just explodes.
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
and normally I'm the kind of person that blames the person operating it, because really when you think about it, it comes down to you're the one who's in control of it. You should know better than to, like, say, for example, you're driving a car and, oh, well, that guy just kind of jumped out in front of me. There's nothing I could have done to stop it. I'm like, yeah, you could have tried driving slower. You have more reaction time. So it's totally your fault. But at the same time, it's like with a train, you don't have that option. It's too big to slow down on a dime. Yeah. So in that case, that's one of the few times where I'll be like, if you jump in front of a train, you kind of had it coming. There's nothing you can't realistically expect people to slow something that takes 2 miles to stop, or like roughly 4 kilometers almost to stop. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't just go jumping in front of those things. That's why you don't like race them to in like the crossing. You let it go. You see those crossing arms come down, you let that thing go. Don't get in its way, because if your car stalls out on the tracks, bad things happen. You'll either lose the car, your life, or both.
Yeah, that's true.
I saw a video not too long ago here in Orlando, because we've got a rail line that goes right through downtown, and some dude in the middle of the night thought it'd be a good idea to try to beat the CSX Express. and this beast came right on through. It's like, oh, fuck you, I'm a train. And there goes his car. Like, the thing, it just pushed it down the street like it was no big deal. You know what? I'll actually show it to you if you want to see.
Yeah, Pavel just he wrote some funny stuff. Obvious most common question from digital painting: how do you recognize it's a finished piece? Or, oh dear, will there be bloodstains? I mean, that would be an option actually. Put a little story in there and put some like stick some antlers on top of the or at the front of the train with some bloodstains.
1 second. Let's save what I'm working on. Actually, let me hit accept mask because I'm pretty much done with that mask. Ah, there it is. CSX train smashes Civic Street. Happened a couple months ago. Yep. I remember this. So check this out.
Yeah. I think I've even seen this one. It's quite.
This happened like maybe 10 miles from where I live, but I think it's even the same train that I'm making.
I just love those dudes sitting there. Fucking stop!
Yeah, it's not gonna stop. It can't stop, man. Yep, here it comes.
Choo choo. And you're gone.
Pushes it down the street like it's no big deal. You can't stop that thing on a dime. It takes like miles.
Yeah.
The guy's like, the best part about it is that you drove it off too. Check this out. They catch up with it later, right? And it's like all busted up on the tracks, and they get into it, and it still works. See? So they drive away in this busted up car, and the door doesn't even close all the way anymore. That's awesome, personally.
It is.
So yeah. Anyway, so back to work here. So as I was saying, like you gotta be careful around these things. It doesn't matter where you live. Even the electric locos where you guys are can be kind of a big problem. They don't come to a stop in a split second either. So, we're getting on quitting time here in about half an hour. If you guys have anything else you'd like to see while I'm working on this, I mean, this is a workshop for you guys. What I'm working on is just a conduit for showing you cool stuff. So, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to ask. You don't have to have a muted microphone.
Yeah, you can just start speaking if you want to ask some questions.
Okay. So I've also covered, I think I've covered bump maps too, a little bit, but I can do it again real fast. I've actually used bump quite thoroughly through this whole thing. The dirt in the front here being a pretty good example of that. If you look at the bump channel and I turn this off, you can, if I get it close to it, you can see a little bit of it. It pops out just a bit.
Yeah, hardly. It's really.
I may even actually force it to bump out more. So if I go to this Megascan soil, sorry, I can't show you the preview of it, but it is from Megascans though. If I go to the bump channel and I change the level here from 132 to, let's say I change it to like 138, you'll see it pops out a little bit more. See?
Yeah.
Now, it looks a little offset because of the way 3D currently handles this, so it's a little strange looking right now. But when I bring it into Unreal, it'll look fine. So, yeah, this is really, really fun to work on. It's also really cool that I get to show you guys all this stuff. I think one thing I'm going to do too is try to make this coupler look a little bit more old. Kind of right now it looks a little too new to me, even if it is rusty. Like it's not as dirty as it probably should be. Let's go to the coupler layer and adjust that a little bit.
So that's a mix of a normal map and bump mapping.
Yes, it's normal and bump. And then the bump channel actually gets combined into the normals on export. So it'll all be normals in the end.
Yeah, so the bump map is imported in normal automatically or exported.
Yep. At least with a game engine preset, it will be.
And you are working UDK or Unity or?
Unreal 4.
Yeah. Unreal 4.
There we go.
I wanted to ask a question, if I can.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
There was something about alpha masks, which you can paint in Substance Designer, ZBrush, whatever. Somebody was selling it, and I've tried a few of them, but I wasn't able to make it pop out on the model when painting it with Endo or Freedo.
What do you mean pop out?
There was like no settings to adjust the height of painted details. Is it possible even to adjust the height of the details you paint with a brush, a custom alpha brush?
I'd have to see what you're talking about to help you out with that.
I would love to show you that, but kind of on a notebook, so I can't even turn anything here.
I mean, but you can. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to adjust the level of something. I mean, everything that I painted was done with Endo, and I used a lot of alpha brushes in here. Like all these bolts are all alpha brushes.
Yeah, and they really stand up, and I wasn't able to do that, so I was probably doing something odd. I tried create a bump map, then go to paint mode and use the black and white image on a bump map to create the detail. But the intensity of the height was too small, it was barely visible. So we are painting it in the normal map.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to sit down in one of my Endo sessions, and I'd go over it with you gladly. There's some trickery involved, but it's really simple stuff. So, but I mean, I'll gladly go over it with you sometime.
I will check it out. Do you have a link or something?
Not currently, no. They were recorded, but they were deleted. Twitch removed them after like a week, 2 weeks.
Right.
Oh. But yeah.
The process should be painting on a normal map and in a sculpt mode.
Yeah, I mean, I covered 3D painting, I covered sculpt mode, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So I mean, should be simple enough to follow along with. But I'll be doing another Endo session after I finish this model up. So I'll help you out with that. Or we can sit down sometime and talk about it. Or you can even post on the group. We can always help you there. That may be a simpler solution.
I will try to. Thanks.
No problem. There we go. So yeah, I mean, this thing is inching closer to being done. Once I finish up more of the decal work and stuff, I think this will be ready for going into Unreal, and I can finish up the interior. Or actually, instead of finish, I can actually start the interior.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see that.
It'll probably be something really simple. Because the interior is definitely not the focus of this thing, and you'll only be able to see it from a couple of angles. So, but I guess if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it right. So we'll see.
I mean, if you just want to render it, you could always Photoshop it in there, but knowing how much detail you have in there already, I sort of know that you're going to model that instead of fake it.
Probably. If I can find good references for it, I'll definitely try to.
Yeah.
Another thing that's bugging me here too. I need to actually have Max open to select these connector pieces here because I need to make them like a gray plastic instead of green like that. What else do I want to do to this thing?
But I kind of like the green because it breaks up the And it looks more realistic in a sense, because they sometimes have weird color schemes on there.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Definitely vote for green.
What's that?
I definitely vote for green. Keep it green. Keep it green.
Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to actually add yellow paint to this thing. In
I mean,
some spots.
you could make it a bit darker.
Yeah, maybe. But what I need to do here, though, is actually add more of that yellow paint on here and on some of these handles. That's something I forgot to do. I like how people are still saying they're going to my ND workshop, and it's like, I'm not even, it's like halfway over, 2/3 over already. It's like, it's done now, man. A little late on the train there. Okay, so while we wait for this to load. But yeah, you can see here I've actually done, like, pretty much every detail in here was done with Endu, like those little pieces here, like from height maps, like the ZBrush alphas, for example. This is like welds done in Endu Painter, stuff like that.
Yeah. Dude, Billy's video is blowing up.
Billy's video?
Yeah, 108 likes on him spreading out coffee.
Oh, yeah. And then there's that guy in there, it's like, oh, when is Megascan's going to be released? It's like, really? It's his birthday.
Will it ever be released? Of course not, but don't tempt Billy. We're having so much fun making him scan all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to be released. It's obviously what our master plan is. All right. I need to look at my reference material here and see where I'm adding stuff. Of course, PureRef is going crazy. 1 second. The only thing I don't like about PureRef is it has this annoying tendency to unload its images out of RAM if you don't use it for a while. So when you go to like scroll around it, it just starts to lock up because it tries to load everything back up again. Other than that, it's perfectly fine. Oh, you know what? That's not going to work the way I thought it would. I need to add that above that layer, because no matter what I paint here, it's always going to be black because the black's above it. So hold on. Actually, you know what I might end up doing too is adding yellow paint to all of this right here. Because from what I'm looking at my references, a lot of them just have yellow bars there, but some of them only have yellow tips. Maybe I'll just do the tips yellow.
I mean, it's your work. You can do what you want.
Oh, of course I can. Thanks for stating the obvious.
Paint it pink! Go for it!
Why not? Okay.
Unicorns, unicorns, unicorns.
So I need to copy this, and I'm actually going to duplicate this particular layer. And I'm going to stick that out of there by moving it out, which will then send it out into this group. I'm going to stick it above the black paint, and then I'm going to click Move In. And what that will do is put it inside of the black paint group. And again, for those of you wondering why it's taking a little longer to process stuff, welcome to the world of 8K, 4K, and 2K painting simultaneously. Okay. Now I can click this and click Move In. And I saw a guy not too long ago who was saying he was like afraid to do any adjustments because of the processing time, and I'm like, it only takes like 5 seconds at most. It's not a big deal. Just wait for it and you're good to go, man.
Yeah.
Personally, I like the results that I get, so I don't mind waiting a moment or two to work. So some things take longer than others to process. That's true. But I like the effects that I get from a procedural scan-based workflow. Speaking of procedural too, I might even take this thing into D2 Legacy and take the masks out of it and add them in here too. You ever seen D2 Legacy before, Jacob?
Yeah, I've used it.
Oh, I love the masks in that. Well, let me rephrase a couple of the masks. There is no equivalent to the acid and acid large and coffee stains filters in DD2.
I love the cowhide.
Yeah, it's pretty nice too. But the coffee stains in the acid is like it's pretty much. I'll take any jet that I make and throw it through that because it makes the panels stick out properly.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it that way, it doesn't look right.
I mean, I've been basically with Quixel since the beginning of time. No,
Are you
but
sure? What was it in the beginning of time?
well, I got the first commercial release of Undo, and after that I just stuck with them and enjoyed watching them progress to a whole other level of awesomeness.
Oddly enough, it's still getting paint. Oh, I know why. It's because of the material ID. Let me turn this off. And that should allow me to clear the paint out. Actually, if I set the ID to nothing, maybe that'll solve it. Come on, buddy. What are you doing here? There appears to be some stuck paint. That's fine. I'll just paint over it in black. Get rid of the rest of that. Okay. This is almost ready to go now. Cool. Now I can come in here and add the details that I want to add. So this might be a little tough because the proximity painting in this program needs a little bit of adjustment still. Turn this all the way up, make sure that's off, and make sure my performance settings are set to undo and auto fix seams. And I should be able to come in here and paint the parts that I want for this. Oh, look at that, 3D stopped working. Fascinating. Okay, let's try this. Paint mask in Photoshop. Oh, I know why it's doing this. I had custom paint masks in there. It makes more sense now. We'll just reload 3D and try again. What is up with these people just randomly blocking people?
I don't know.
Just so you know, Judith, if you block someone here and you try to come back, if that person's in here, you won't be able to rejoin. You may wish to undo that. So, unless you don't want to come back, in which case, hey, we'll see you next time, I suppose. Okay, so back to the paint here. Now, I should have removed that paint that I had. Let me turn off material IDs this time, and that should resolve it. And then click clear, and that gets rid of the rest of it. All right, perfect. Switch mask paint to that. And proximity all the way back up. And performance to auto fix seams. Sweet. I can paint where I want. Set the spacing down. So one of the things I have to worry about here too, again, is that I don't want the paint to apply through the model. That's one of the things I'm getting Samir to work on right now, is fixing up the painting algorithm so that it's more Mudbox-like in the sense that you can paint only on connected areas. So like, I don't know if any of you guys have actually used Mudbox or not, but it will only paint when a piece of geometry is physically connected to another one. Like, none of this here is welded into this. So if this wireframe was connected to that, then it would pretty much allow you to paint through to that point. But with DD, you can pretty much paint over it, and I kind of want that to not happen. So I'm gonna be pushing towards that going away.
That would be awesome.
That's a minor inconvenience, but it's one of those things that, coming from a mudbox painting background, I'd really like to see more of a focus on the paint behaving like that. I think mudbox didn't get a whole lot of things right, but the way it paints, it definitely did get quite, did a pretty good job of that. So very much a proponent of that, but you can see I'm starting to paint through, even though it's not touching. So it's not hard to fix. It's just slightly obnoxious to come in here and edit out. Change the lighting so I can see what I'm doing. Beta mode and get some in here and adjust too. Smaller your brushes too, the less likely it is that it'll paint through. So helps out as well. Still there, Jacob?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't get muted or something. I've had that happen in the past. Somebody randomly decides to mute you for no good reason.
It's because I'm German.
Are they afraid of you or something? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think so.
So I've got one side of this thing done. A little bit of color, I think, adds a lot to it too. Kind of makes it pop out more. It has to happen to this too. So let me turn on the symmetry painting. At the very least, I'll do it on the other side for this little piece right here. And it's going to paint through, unfortunately, but I'll fix that. So we're going to be wrapping up here in about 6 minutes. I've got other stuff I got to do today. A couple people got to help. Got a guy from Pixar I got to talk to and some other stuff. So, yeah. Interesting times we live in, for sure. I had one of the guys I work with at the office the other day saying, like, is that a humble brag? You're talking about somebody from Pixar? And I'm like, no, not really. I mean, I still got to help them out. What's that? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay. So anyway, with the symmetry mode, you can see that I painted on both sides simultaneously. So some of it's not quite perfect. Gotta look at it from both angles, but
I mean, it's painted anyway.
what's that?
I said it's painted anyway, so it can look sort of imperfect.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's almost like a rubber they put on this thing.
Yeah.
There we go. That's looking better. Should have had symmetry on for this part too, but I turned it off. Didn't think about it. Now he's getting muted. Hey, Pavel, or Pavel, you're muted, by the way. Somebody decided to mute you for no particularly discernible reason.
No, I'm here again.
And now he's left. I wish people would stop doing that. I'm going to look into seeing if we can switch away from Google Hangouts so we can have this be a little bit more moderated. I think it's one of the drawbacks of the software is people can just decide that. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to they don't even know that they're muting you for everybody. But it's, I don't know. It's just kind of silly that anybody feels they need to do that.
Yeah.
So all part of a community, and you guys are all welcome to talk. Just please do so respectfully. You don't have to like each other, but the least you can do is be nice while you're in here.
And try to be always nice.
Yes, you're an upstanding Quixel citizen.
Oh, thank you. Will I get a badge or something?
A badge. This guy right here. Will I get a badge? Out of here with that.
Buy the premium version of Quixel Suite, and you will get a I'm a good citizen or I'm a good Quixel citizen badge. For
Premium
free.
version of Quixel Suite. Is that like Facebook Gold?
I I don't even know what Facebook Gold is.
That's the joke. It's not real.
Oh, God, now you just make me look stupid in front of everyone who's going to be watching this in the future. Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Not my fault. You don't know any better.
No.
So, all right, I'm pretty much done for this time being. I'm gonna accept my mask and save my project. So, hopefully, people learn some cool stuff. If not, well, there's always more of these in the future. This is by no means an isolated thing. We always, or at least I always, try to do these. Anytime I'm working on something, I figure people want to know how to reproduce it or how to work. So,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that.
no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
I actually love you guys much more when you are doing hangouts and stuff, because you are actually talking to the users, which I've
Yeah.
never seen before, never ever anywhere.
Yeah, I
Really
take a lot of
thank you
pride
for-
in my job. I apologize for interrupting you, but I do take a lot of pride in the work that I do and the level of interaction I can have with you guys. And I like to always close out by saying this, but like it's like because of you guys we do this. Because of you guys I have a job. Because of you guys that our community is what it is. So thank you for being here and hanging out with us and just being you. So. Next time, hopefully we can do some more stuff besides just this one model that I've already done a ton of times. So, I actually save the. I think I did. Actually, this looks like the old mask on those trucks for that oil. I could have sworn I'd repainted that. I guess I didn't. Oh well. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. I will talk to you guys some other time. Have a good one. Look forward to more of these in the future. It's definitely not one thing that we do. So have a good one, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.